I'm making a roguelike game where you play as a prisoner trying to escape from a dungeon by making your own unique weapons. And when I say I mean my brother Luka and I. He'll make the art, models and animations for the game, and I will develop everything in Unity. We recently played Hades for the first time and got inspired to make our first roguelike. If you've never played Hades before and are wondering what is a roguelike, let me explain. Roguelikes are games that have permadeath feature, meaning if you die, you lose all your progress and you have to start from scratch. It might sound stupid, but trust me, it's really fun. Roguelikes also have procedurally generated levels, so each time you play, you get a unique experience, so in theory, you can play forever. We don't want to make just another generic roguelike, so we decided to add our own little twist to it. We thought that it would be interesting that instead of finding or purchasing weapons like in every other roguelike, you can find elements like iron or wood, and then you can choose which weapons you want to make. You can also get some more interesting materials like fire or lightning and combine them with iron and wood to make a more unique weapon, kind of like in Minecraft. So, to develop this game, we need to make the main character, make procedurally generated levels, add some enemies which can also be procedurally generated, add the feature for crafting, and finally add some bosses. So, let's get started. The first thing that we'll work on is the player. Luka made this character and we decided to name him Cornelius the Azure. He is a prisoner in a dungeon and he is tortured there. That's why he has these bandages all over him. We took inspiration from the Berserk manga and added a torture helmet on him, just like Griffith had before the eclipse. But don't worry, there won't be an eclipse here. We didn't want to make it just a plain round helmet, so Luka made it look like a big hat, and I think it looks very cool. Luka made some animations for him and I added him to the game, so now he can walk and roll. The first weapon that we'll add to the game is the sword. Luka made a model for the basic sword and some animations and effects, and I added them to the game. We also added some obstacles. You'll be able to collect materials from them in the future, but for now they're here just to test the weapons. Together, it looks like this. If you like how the game works for now, you can wishlist it on Steam, but stay till the end to see what else we'll add to the game. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Now that the player is basically done, we need some real enemies for the player to fight. I know that these chairs and barrels look dangerous, but they really aren't. We decided to have three main enemy types. The first one is a skeleton guard. It has a big spear and if you get too close, it dashes towards you. You might have noticed that the skeleton guards don't have feet. Well, that's because their legs are actually very short. So to look taller and scarier, they are wearing these long robes and flying on small hoverboards. The second enemy type is basic skeletons, and I think they're more interesting than the skeleton guard. The skeletons are procedurally generated, so they will have different properties and abilities based on what equipment the algorithm chooses for them. The skeletons can have different amounts of health based on the armor and the helmets, and they can have a sword or a bow as a weapon. Luka made all these models and animations, and now that I've added everything to the game, it looks like this. The last enemy type for now will be the Robo Knights. There are three types of Robo Knights: red, blue and green. The red one is the most basic one. It only has a sword and attacks you if you get close to him. The blue one is a bit more complicated because it has a shield, so to damage it, you need to wait until it attacks you, dodge the attack, and then try to damage it while it doesn't have the shield up. The third robot is the green one, and it is my favorite. It doesn't have a sword or a shield, but it has a big hole in its belly and it can shoot bombs from it. Now that we have player and the enemies, we need some levels to put them into. Since this is a roguelike game, the levels need to be procedurally generated. I started by making procedurally generated grid of boxes that will represent the room. Then I added code that adds walls on the outside. This is starting to look nice, but it's a bit empty, so I added some obstacles like these two torches and this pillar that are randomly spawned throughout the room. I also added the breakables and the enemies to the algorithm, and now the levels are complete. Soon I'll need to add crafting functionality, so I need to add some elements. I changed the code for the breakables a bit, so now when you break something, there's a chance that you'll get an iron, a wood or a rope. These materials will be used to make basic weapons like swords, bows and shields. If you played any roguelikes with rooms like this game, you know that at the end of each room you get some upgrades. Luka made some UI art for the elements and I added an upgrade screen when you finish the room. When you finish a room in our game, you get 3 options to choose from. These options can be health, 3 of the basic materials like iron or wood, or 1 of the special materials like fire or ice. These choices are randomly generated, so you can get any combination of the 3. Now that you can get elements, it is time to use them to make some crazy weapons. Luka made this UI for crafting and I spent an unreasonable amount of time working on the crafting mechanic. Here's what you can make for now. First, there are 3 basic materials for now: iron, wood and rope. With those materials, you can make basic weapons like swords, bows and shields. For now, you can only make swords. There are also 5 special materials: fire, ice, rock, lighting and wind. If you combine any of these materials with an iron, you get a special iron that can be used to make special swords. For example, if you use fire iron instead of basic iron, you get a fire sword. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We want to add bows and shields as well, but I would like to hear what other weapons would you like to see. Also, you can tell us what other special elements you think would be cool, and if you like the game so far, you can wishlist it on Steam. I had a weird idea that it would be cool to have some kind of vulnerable and defenseless friends that only you can save or they die. Luka made the model and animations and I added them in the game. They are your fellow cellmates and for now they only run around and call for help. But in the future, I think it would be cool to add some special kind of currency that you get if you save them. The currency can be then used to get some perma upgrades or something like that. Speaking of perma upgrades, we need a place where we start each run and when you can upgrade your character. Luka made this jail cell from which you will start each new run. Every time you lose in the game, Cornelius isn't really dead, but he is just back in his cell, being tortured off camera. But there is a magic fairy goddess that treats his wounds and unlocks the cell for him. Her name is Agnipa and I added a dialogue system so now you can talk to her. For now, her job is just to tell you the commands of the game, but in the future I think it would be cool to make her the hub for perma upgrades. Let me know what you think. Now it's time for maybe the most exciting part of any game, and that is bosses. But I'll leave that for another video. I'll put that video here when it comes out, and in the meantime you can check out how I made my first game in 100 days.